All right, Amy, it is so good to finally see you.
Yeah,
it's
great
been
to see you too.
a few years since we've been able to catch up because of the pandemic and COVID protocols. So just so good to see you here.
Same here. It's so great to see you.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to catching up with you and hearing about the newest endeavors you've been taking part in with the new role you're in right now. And so with that, I'm curious to hear about what that role is for you, because you started off in the outpatient clinic, then you went into the MBA, and now you're here in the NFL. So what exactly is the role that you're in with right now?
Well, it's a blessing to be here, and thank you for having me, Adam. It's been quite the journey, and you were a big part of it as well. Right now, I'm working in the private sector of the NFL. So I'm working with one athlete privately full time. And I live in Denver now. I just moved from Seattle, so my athlete just traded, and from the Seahawks to the Broncos now, and now I'm here.
How was the transition going from Seattle to Denver?
The transition was a little bit tough, but we made it. It was only tough because I was pregnant at the time, had the baby. My baby was in the NICU for a little bit, and then, we discharged her home, and now we're here. We moved maybe like a month after she was discharged home, but everything was successful and smooth, thankfully.
So now you're a new mom now.
Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Oh, so within that role, what are some of kind of the day-to-day? What does it look like?
So I would have to divide it into a couple different ways. The day-to-day, it differs from in-season and off-season. So my job is still full-time during the season as well as off-season. During the season, my role is very individualized. So I'm really just trying to make sure that my guy is healthy. And day-to-day treatments, everything is kind of like making sure he's ready to go for the next game the next week. Except for last week, we had 2 games in 1 week, prime time, Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
That's always tough. Off season, it's a little different in the sense that now his entire S&C staff is there, and we work a little bit more collaborative with the private sector team. Strength coach, a couple strength coaches, massage therapists, some additional trainers come in and out, and then we work on building capacity for the season and fixing the dings that happen during the season. So similar to the being on the team, but in the private sector, it's a little bit more individualized to the athlete preferences.
Okay, so let's rewind here for the listeners here. You worked in the team setting in the NBA, correct?
Yes.
And then you transitioned to a job working in the private sector for a particular athlete.
Yes.
So I'm curious because we see the same thing in our space too, where I work in the team setting, but then athletes come to us and they have their own people as well, their own performance team, which just sounds like the athlete you're working with has quite the team as well. So working on the team side versus working with the individual team, what's that been like for you?
It's been a little different, and I have to say it's been a blessing to be able to experience both sides because I can appreciate both sides. But the private sector, and it could differ from one athlete to another, but based on my experience, the differences lie in the individuality. So within the team, I had multiple athletes that I was responsible for, and now I'm responsible for one athlete. And so it seems kind of crazy. It's like you only work with one athlete. The concept seems very simple, but it is also complex in the sense that 100% of my caseload is my athlete. So I really have to make sure all the boxes are checked, and we're really hitting all things to make sure he's top notch. He's ready to go. If there's something that's not going smoothly, we have to address it.
Man, that sounds like quite a lot to be working with one guy for how many hours a day you think on, let's say, game day? How many hours do you think you're with a guy?
I'm with him all day.
All day.
All day.
Like
yeah.
you like alarm clock, like you're like you wake up and you are on your way in to go work.
Yeah, game days are probably the longest days. I'm there first thing in the morning. It depends what time the game is, but if it's an evening game, we still get started pretty early because the goal is to keep him moving, keep him warm, and have his body healthy, his mind ready. Yeah.
Yeah, so I get that. So are you within the role? Are you responsible for? Because it sounded like there was what, half a dozen to maybe 10 people working on this person's team.
There's a lot of people working on the team, but it differs throughout the year, in season and off season. But in season, it's primarily it's me, and there's another physical therapist, Janet Jin. She's absolutely amazing. He has a massage therapist. He has a couple chefs, and the chef is also part of the performance team. Okay. Extremely difficult, demanding job as well. What else? At the top of my head, those are probably like the biggest, full-time people. And he has someone to help him with mobility work, as well as yoga as well.
Man, so he's getting the works. That's amazing. I mean, credit to him for. I mean, I commend athletes that do that, right? When they get into a space and they want to have a long career, we know there's so much that they can do for them. But then to see these individuals take it upon themselves to bring and surround themselves with people, I think it's phenomenal. Like a credit to their character, and it's cool for you to be a part of that too. Absolutely, it's a blessing, and he's one to really take pride in his health, and he has the specialists and team around him to help him do that. So now you're like, right? The question is, you have this team working with this particular athlete, but then he plays for a team. Yes. Right. So I would imagine there at times could be competing goals, or maybe there are expectations that y'all have for him, and maybe the team has different expectations for him, right? Because when you were with the Suns, we had expectations for our players. Absolutely. But then now you're on the other side. It's like, hey, like we want to do this with you. So is there a way that y'all interact or integrate kind of what's going on the personal team side with also maybe the organizational policies or expectations they have as well? Do those integrate at all? Great question. So maybe I'll touch on the perspective of working in the private sector. So my role, my priority is to protect him and take care of him. And the decision making is interesting because I'm employed by my athlete, and I work for the athlete, and then I'm employed by my athlete as well. So, which differs from the team setting in the sense that you're employed by the team, but you have an athlete that you're taking care of. So first and foremost, I have to make sure that my athlete is taken care of and he's protected. And when it comes to decision making, it's funny. The first day, I kind of asked him, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, how much do you take in consideration what the professional says, what the expert says, what science says, how you feel? Like, can you draw me a pie graph? And I had him draw me a visual. I'm a visual person. And he emphasized the majority of that pie graph with a small sliver for expert opinion. And the rest of the pie graph was how he feels. And so what I took from that was that it was very significant in terms of how he's feeling. So when we make decisions, it's very collaborative, and I take that, I keep that in mind when we're making clinical decisions and big decisions and related to his care. So are you, when it comes to some of those decisions within the role, is it fair to say that you're kind of the point person for the team, or is there another individual where you're relaying that information to kind of, I guess, have the final say, or have that final input from the athlete as well? Like, where does that communication fall? Yeah. So let's give an example. For instance, we have dings, and then we have injuries, right? Yes. We have lots of dings during the season. Most of the times the dings are kind of taken care of, privately. If we can fix it within a few days, it's not a significant thing to kind of bring up. It's almost like with the Suns, when we had, a couple dings here,
we didn't really, we documented them, but it was not added to the injury list because it did not remove them from participation in practice. It did not remove them from participation in a game. So we address a lot of dings kind of just on our own. And when it comes to actual injuries, those are communicated between the team, the actual team, and then the private team as well. Depending on who's on the scene first, you know, if the injury happened during the game, if the injury happened during practice. During practice, I'm on the field. I can see everything that's happening. But if let's say the head ATC is on site, you know, they would, you know, reach out to me and let me know what they saw and what happened, and then it's collaborative from there.
That's awesome. So let's follow up with this example here, right? Athlete goes down with an injury during practice. From your perspective in the team, and then also with the team, the performance team of the athlete versus the sports team, right? From start to finish, can you walk us through what that process looks like of trying to integrate with the team, but then with his own team as well? How does that look?
Yeah, so in the past, when we had like a minor injury, if you will, it occurred during practice, and then the athletic trainer reached out to me and mentioned it to me. And then from there, I discussed with the athletes. So I had mentioned, you know, it's a priority to protect the athlete and make sure everything is communicated with the athlete. At that time, we do our own assessment, and then I compare and contrast that with what the trainer, the head ATC, had also assessed. And then I go back to the athlete. Everything's kind of like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Come up with the game plan, make sure the athlete is okay with that game plan, and then, you know, communicate back to the ATC, this is what we're going to do. Day 1's going to look like this. Day 2, you know, these are the check boxes. Day 3, hopefully full go, you know, for that full practice, and then go from there.
You guys, sounds like you have really good communication with the sports team, because I think it's a topic that isn't necessarily managed well all the time, because we're seeing more and more trends of these athletes hiring their own people, hiring their own team, because rightfully so, if they get traded, I would imagine they want continuity of care. So I've seen situations or heard of situations where, let's just in quotations here, the outside team is doing one thing, not communicating, and then the sports team is doing one thing, and it's kind of this tug and war of imbalance of care, or almost like button heads at the same time.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't sound like the case here. It sounds like you guys are doing a really good job there. Like for people that are in those situations, either on the, you know, working with the individual player or working with the team, what have you found to be successful for managing that relationship to help the athlete work with his team, but then work with the sports team too?
It's a great question. Because I was able to work with a team setting in the NBA, and now I'm working in the private sector, I feel like I can appreciate both sides, and I can see the perspective biased from both sides as well. In general, I think there's an assumption that you know, there is kind of like this butting heads. There is kind of this subtle ego, like, you know, from the team. Sometimes they may think that the private personnel is trying to take over everybody and keep information away. And then from the team setting, and then from the private setting, you know, sometimes there's this assumption that the team can't do a great job. I think at the end of the day, the best advice and perspective I can give is, I think if we can remove our egos and understand that at the end of the day, the team is trying to win. The team is trying to make sure everyone is healthy, and the team is trying to make sure everyone can participate, then we can all get along, and there will be no butting heads. That would be the ideal picture. I think from the team perspective, if they can appreciate that, appreciate the perspective of the athlete. You know, sometimes the athlete needs some privacy. Sometimes the athlete wants to get some additional expert opinions, and that's just more help to help them get healthy and win as a team. And then from the perspective of the private personnel, there's logistics in team environments, and we have to respect that. If we're entering their house, the practice facility, we have to understand that we're in their house, their environment, and we want to respect their rules and policies, which I understand because I was a part of that. If that helped answer the question.
Yeah, of course. It's like you have a very unique perspective because you've had the opportunity to work in a professional team on the team setting, in-house, like you said, in their house, but then now you've migrated to a role where you were once there, but now you're working specifically for one athlete. So I just think the perspective you have is wonderful. And I hope it sheds light and gives some direction for those that may be struggling with this or those that find themselves in this situation. Because I deal with this all the time. We have players that have their own people. And I find that, I think the thing you said the best was the communication and make sure the athlete is the focus and just trying to win. And at the end of the day, removing the ego is hard to do. Removing your ego is hard to do because, you get to a level of being around the best. And so, you want to implement the things that you believe in. But at the end of the day, it ultimately comes down to, hey, what are the athlete's options? What makes the most sense right now? And then kind of let them navigate that as they see fit.
Right. Yeah. Well said.
Well, thank you. So part of your role, I would imagine, and part of my role is we deal with a lot of, let's call it return to play, return to performance, return to sport. Choose your buzzword. So within that process of rehab and an injury or a nick, can you highlight some of the things that you're looking for when it comes to return to play for an athlete? What you believe in may be successful when managing not only your expectations with the athlete, but then also what the team's expecting from return to play as well.
It's specific to the athlete. So my athlete is a quarterback overhead athlete. So there are things that I look for as a PT in terms of return to play, mechanically speaking, functionally speaking, performance wise, and then there's what the athlete needs. So because I'm working for the athlete and the athlete is my employer, I'm coming to him a lot in terms of, he's dictating a lot of what he needs. And then I'm kind of there to help with that return to play. So he's an extremely cognizant, aware individual. So he knows exactly what he needs to get back to 100%, if you will. Most of the times what I'm doing is, depending on the timeline of the injury, I look at when is the next time he needs to practice, what kind of practice it is. Is it a full pads practice? Is it a walkthrough type practice? When's the next game? And in football, it's usually anywhere from 3 days, if it was like last week, or 5 days. So that's our return to play. It's literally a 5-day window every single time. Unless it's a devastating injury, then the return to play is a little bit more integrated. But the return to play during season is it's typically about 5 days acutely, and then working along the lines of, what days do we have to do full rehab? What days do we have to do some modified activity? And then I work with the athlete and come up with that plan of care verbally. And then for me, I write everything down, but my athlete just likes to, okay, what are we going to do? I know kind of how he thinks and what his preferences are. Check those boxes with him and then execute.
Oh, that's wonderful. So one thing you hit on, which I find myself struggling at times too, is, within that process, the athlete comes to you and says, hey, I need this. Right? And maybe it's their own preference, their own bias. And I think that exists a lot with athletes that have been playing for a long time. They've been exposed to quite a variety of practitioners, mindsets, thoughts, right? So how do you balance when the athlete tells you they want to do something, but in your mind it either goes against what you believe in or it goes against what you think is right in the moment right now?
Sure, that happens often. It's you just have to kind of weigh it out. So sometimes what my athlete wants may differ from what I feel is best for him. What I always try to do is listen to my athlete and understand where they're coming from, understand what they're trying to achieve, and then be patient with it. go with the flow, if you will, and then when the time is right, offer my expert opinion if I feel the need to do so. Sometimes I may be right, sometimes I may be wrong, sometimes it's not a big deal, but there are a few times where I will intervene with what I feel is the right thing to do, and we usually work it out. We usually figure out what the best decision is. With the athlete's perspective and mine.
I gotcha. And I think it's a critical point that you hit there, is collecting opinions, collecting perspectives, intervening when you believe it's appropriate, but also trusting the athlete too, because I think it sounds like you have a lot of trust with this athlete and he trusts you as well. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the decision-making process, it seems a bit seamless for you when you guys are deciding which way to go. Mm-hmm. Now, do the other practitioners y'all work with too, because you're not the only one on this private sector team, how do their opinions and schools of thought and philosophy play into what you have to do as well?
Great question. In the private sector, athletes can choose a variety of people to help them along their journey as a professional athlete. And I think this may differ from the corporate setting in the sense that we have a lot of resumes and experience and credentials, but in the private sector, it could be anyone, and individuals can be deemed an expert in their own way, and have contrasting philosophies and contrasting experience and credentials or lack thereof. But at the end of the day, this is someone that the athlete trusts. And, when you're a part of the team, you want to be patient and understand everything and work collaboratively to help your athlete, because that's what you signed up for.
Absolutely. I think that's what we're all here to do, is to help them get better, be successful. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like there's a bigger picture than what you have to do in the context of not only the private sector team, but also the sports team too. Mm-hmm. And one thing you hit on when you're talking about the team was, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper on, is the experience, because you come from a pretty diverse background. Mm-hmm. You've had a wide variety of experiences. Could you talk about the transition? Let's talk about the first transition you made from working outpatient to then starting your own private business. What was that like for you?
Oh yeah. So I was working in various clinics and settings as a physical therapist for about 8 years, and then I transitioned out on my own. I just got to a point where, and I never saw it coming, but that year I was just like, you know what? I think I had reached a point, a plateau, if you will, in my career where I just felt like I needed to not necessarily jump off a cliff, but jump off a cliff in a good way. Like I was ready for something out of the box that I wasn't used to, and something that was more challenging. And I just thought, let me just try doing this on my own. And, after years of rehabbing, you kind of, you feel like you want to do something less monotonous. So I wanted to enter the world of prehab and just start working with the high school. And I volunteered myself as a strength conditioning coach, my husband's basketball team. And it was a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed that. And I started networking with a bunch of coaches, athletic trainers, and as you network, you get to know more and more athletes and coaches, and it just started to grow. So within 5 months, I was seeing private clients, and 90% of them was for preventative care, performance, and maybe like 10% was post-operative.
I would imagine that took quite a bit of courage to jump from something that's sustainable, more secure, working in like a typical W-2 job, right?
Yep.
So for like people that are considering that transition of, hey, like I think I'm ready to do my own thing, what would be the advice to just pull the plug and do it? What would you say to them?
Sink or swim. You can't hesitate. You can't do anything extraordinary without doing something extraordinary.
I love that. Oh, that is definitely an Amy Atmore quote.
Sink or swim.
I love that for you.
But yeah, obviously it came with risks. I, looking back financially, I took a dip the first couple months, but when you're on that survival mode, you have to really work hard to make sure you're making your ends meet, but then, you know, you're also reassessing, is this really what you want to do? Are you capable of doing it? And I asked myself all those questions, and I said, yeah, I can do this. I believe in myself, and I'm going to do it. And you just follow through, and it'll take you beyond where you thought you could go.
That's amazing. That's it's quite the challenge for those that are thinking about it. And then from there, you made another transition, a pretty challenging one too.
Yeah.
You transitioned from having your own business, kind of being a point person for everybody that you were working with, to then joining an NBA team and being a part of a bigger team. So what was that transition like for you?
Going from the NBA to the private sector and the NFL.
Let's go private sector to NBA. Like you were private sector to NBA team.
Yes. Oh yeah, that was, you know, it was so different. And I really appreciated the transition and joining a really remarkable team, including you as my supervisor. I think I was really lucky too with having the right support around me. I thought that the interview process was really great because it allowed me to assess whether I can, you know, make this transition. That switch from working private sector to the NBA was very humbling. I think it's assumed that working as a PT for so long and, you know, getting to your next job, you would assume that it'd be smooth and easy, but it was probably one of the most challenging parts of my career. But I learned so much in that first year in so many regards, and logistics. And I've never worked in a team setting in the NBA, so that was all new to me. So anyone coming from the outside and thinking or you know, about to go into the professional sector, it's different. It's very different. Whether you work for 20 years in the clinic or 1 year, it's going to be another journey. So you just have to humble yourself and learn the processes and earn your respect.
Oh, the challenges still exist. The challenges still exist. We're still trying to gain respect from everybody else too. The challenges that you faced, what were some of the ones that you can remember? Like, man, this is not what I was expecting, or this is a lot harder than I thought.
I think initially it was like the schedule. Yeah, but then I realized this is the professional, you know, this is the professional team schedule. You know, you don't really have a schedule. It's not an 8 to 5 job. And but at the same time, I realized mid-season, like, I was made for this. Like, this is really my jam, and I really like the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows. And you have long days and you have short days. You have hard days and you have not so hard days. You have fun days and you have not so fun days. It's very you know, convoluted, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But not everybody is able to work in this environment.
And what would you say would, like, kind of separate those that can and cannot? Because you've done both, and now you're kind of back on the private sector, but still kind of involved in the team sports. Like, what would be something you would say would be a good quality of that person, or like you think, this is probably right for you? What would you say to that?
I think the biggest character or quality is you have. Let me back up. The person you are at the end of the day, at night in your own bed, like, you have to be that same person. Like, you don't want to not be who you are, first and foremost. So you have to truly enjoy, genuinely enjoy what you do on a day-to-day basis, one. And then two, I think you have to be a hard worker. It's kind of generic, but it goes without saying. Like, anyone that works for a team, anyone who works in professional sports or with a professional athlete, you know, even though I'm a PT by trade, I'm not doing PT work all day. I'm doing a lot of little things throughout the day, and it could be related to PT and not. And there's a lot of little tasks here and there, and you have to be okay with helping and assisting and being a team player, and, you know, like, just little things. Like, I in the morning, I make sure that my athlete takes all his vitamins and, you know, drinks his water throughout the day. And you know, it's a little bit of a grind, but if you have that hard work mentality in you, I think you'll be able to sustain.
You never thought you'd go to PT school to wipe sweat off the hardwood floors, did you?
No, but that's like, I mean, I remember when I first started, I was like, oh, okay. And I just like, I got the towel ready and I just ran across it. It was actually kind of fun.
Whoever thought wiping sweat would be fun.
It's just part of your day to day. And like, it would be boring if I was in a cubicle in office all day. Like all these little things throughout the day makes up for, you know, the enjoyment of the job.
I agree. And I think you said it well in that you don't necessarily do PT work all day, but I think that's the joy of it too, because you're no 2 days ever the same, right?
Correct.
Something could happen. There's so many moving parts. Then you're also the beauty of it too is you got so many practitioners from different backgrounds in such a tight space that you get to see other perspectives and learn from others too, which I think is awesome. Now you transitioned out of the NBA and now into the NFL. Still working in team sports, but private sector.
Yep.
So let's full recap here. Outpatient, the private sector, to team sport, to then like this hybrid of private sector to team sport.
Yeah.
So across all of those, what would you say have been some key differences in each of the roles that you've had, or similarities as well?
Key differences. Let's see. Working as a let's see, clinician, I would say, clinician in the community. Your schedule is very, I would say the schedule is very monotonous, but you have a lot of time to spend with family and friends. Team, your schedule is a little bit more involved, less time for family and friends. Your schedule is also less monotonous. So you have game days, non-game days, practice. You're traveling. Sorry, I'm trying not to say so much.
You're good. Don't worry about it.
There's a lot of shoot, I'm blanking here. And AC's talking. There's a lot of ups and downs working for the team. Big key difference, a lot of logistics, a lot of rules and regulations, policies, and communication to the team. Communication from the bottom up and from the top down. Private sector. The key difference is working for your athlete. Now I'm protecting the athlete. I'm not necessarily communicating everything. You know, everything's within the circle of the athlete first and foremost, and then what needs to be communicated can be communicated to the team.
I gotcha. Okay, that makes sense, because you are right. There are key differences across all those spaces, and when you're working for a team, you have certain obligations there, and then when you're working for the athlete, you have certain obligations there. And I think you touched on some great points there. So now the big question is, what are the big differences between NBA and NFL? Oh
yeah, probably the biggest thing is the schedule. So I mean, you have, I forget how many games you guys have in the NBA. It's 182?
No, 82.
No, baseball. Sorry, 82.
No, baseball's crazy. We're at 82.
Oh man. And then with football, it's 17. So there's, you have that contrast in the game schedule, how many games during your season, and then also probably the length of the season as well.
What would you say, the length of the NBA season? I think it's fair to say we're, September to, let's say, hopefully June, and then you kind of have about a 3-month off season. Is it similar in the NFL or is it different?
NFL, once the first game starts, I'd say September through January, or until February with Super Bowl.
Okay, and then what does that time period after Super Bowl look like?
So off season, so March, April, May, June, July. I'd say about 5 months for the off season.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys had quite a bit off season too.
Yeah.
So you get to do a little bit of both. That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then how about culture-wise, right? Like I get that, right? I used to work in soccer, and I get that question a lot. Is, hey, how's like MLS different than, you know, NBA? Have you noticed cultural differences from either just the sport itself, but then maybe across the leagues too? Did you notice anything similar or different?
Yeah, it's different. Like when people ask like, what's, you know, how is it like? It's just different. And, you know, football, obviously it's outside, right? It's not inside. You get your vitamin D. It's a practice. I'm getting the sun. You know, you got your cleats, there's different shoe wear, and just in terms of lifestyle, culture, you know, also differs from position to position. Definitely different from basketball. You know, these guys are preparing for the whole week for one game at the end of the week. There's a lot that goes into it. It's almost like if you take a percentage, one game out of 17 games, it's a pretty significant percentage if you win or lose. It's a very precise thing. And in basketball, I don't want to like brush it off, but like if you lose like one of those 82 games, it's like, okay, we can still bring it back up. A little bit smaller windows between games because you guys can play up to 3-4 games a week sometimes. Yeah. Your capacity has to last for that long. It's a little different. But yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a marathon here in the working in the NBA because, like you said, you can lose one game. No one wants to lose a game, but you're right. When you have 82 of them, it's okay. And you don't have too many. There's yet to be a single team go undefeated in the NBA, which goes to show it's very hard. But you have a lot of games. NFL, not so many games. So I would imagine the stakes are higher, and I imagine it puts a little bit of pressure on you too.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you are dealing with some things, and you are dealing with a little bit. I bet that could be a bit of a stressful time.
Just a little bit of pressure.
Just a little bit. Now, I want to pivot here because for those for our listeners that aren't in the room with us, Amy is an absolute rock star because she's also a new mom, and her child is in the room with us. She's literally doing 2 things at once, which is amazing. So, out of curiosity, how has life been for you? Right, you didn't have a child and work in the NBA, and now you have a child while working as part of an NFL system.
Yeah.
How has your perspective on work-life balance changed?
Oh yeah, it's surreal to think that I am now a mom, and obviously what I'm doing now is different than what I was doing before. The pace is different. My priorities are different. But at the end of the day, I still, in terms of balancing that and how do I balance that, I still, I kind of check myself. So I rethink about my job, my role, what did I sign up for? And I try to make sure I'm checking those boxes every day. And at the same time, I'm trying to be more efficient with that. So then I can still prioritize the care for my daughter. And as a mom, you're doing that, the whole pumping is a whole nother thing. You talk about human performance, like creating and, breast milk is like a whole full-time job. I never thought I would be, doing that, but it's incredible how the human body works.
Yeah, I will never have to face that issue. I'll rely on my wife for that one. But I imagine it's certainly a struggle. Because I see on Instagram you've got your milk bottles in the freezer. Your husband was telling me you got a huge chest of milk at home too. So it sounds like you got it to work. Those that are either contemplating having a family or those that have a family right now that are working in pro sports, what advice do you have for them?
I would say make sure you have great support. My husband, first and foremost, I couldn't do what I'm doing today without my husband. His sacrifice for my career and being able to take care of her during the day, it's a huge blessing. So having that support is first and foremost. Yeah,
I would imagine Ron is he's a rock star too, in
absolutely
in his own way.
Yes,
he's burping like I used to over there. All right, so we're gonna wrap things up here with a few quick hit questions here. One popular misconception about working in pro sports. What do you got?
One popular misconception about working in professional sports. Let's see. I think the majority of people who want to work in this setting might have their reasoning is it's like for the wrong reasons. They think it's all about the lights and the media and the association, and that's probably like 5% of that. Like, people understand that it's a lot more than that, and you won't be able to sleep at night if that's all you're thinking of. So that common misconception of, oh, you're going to be on TV, or you're gonna be highly publicized. So I would say that's one.
And I think on that note, the players sniffed it out very quickly.
Oh yeah,
they'll sniff it out, and if that's what you're there for, if your intentions are that, I think those individuals don't last long.
Yeah,
I think we've seen it happen.
Yeah, and I think if anything, it's actually the complete opposite, because athletes really want their privacy, and they more so respect those that work with them and keep their private information private, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I think an athlete will trust someone more who really helps truly protect them.
I couldn't agree more. What's one thing you didn't fully appreciate about professional athletes until you started working with them full time?
Great question. What is something that I didn't appreciate until I worked with them full time? Just their day-to-day grind and dedication. So my athlete is one of the most dedicated athletes that I've ever worked with. He balances family life and his career, and the amount of time that is put into preparation is hard for people. Don't see that. Like, as soon as the season is over, like, he starts preparing for the next season, and it just is. He never stops. It's constant. From reviewing film to learning the new plays to coming up with new plays. He's dedicated to his body, his mind, his family. It's a lot. Truly impressive, and hands down, very. I don't know. I ran out of adjectives.
I think it's an underappreciated quality. It's very underappreciated. I think the product of social media, the product of TV, all we see is the finished product. But everything you just highlighted is what no one else sees.
Yes.
And I couldn't agree more that you don't necessarily know how much these guys have to put in or choose to put in, because all you see is them play on the court or play on the field.
Correct.
And not only that, but I would imagine they're being pulled in 10 different other directions aside from what maybe you're asking them to do. Or it's just, there's so much going on. I think it truly is underappreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about a common challenge that you face working as a personal physio for someone versus when you were working in a team?
Probably one of the challenges is when you're working for an individual, like I had mentioned before, the team and the professionals and the experts that are coming in and out, sometimes it could be very different. Like, these professionals could have a very different perspective, and you just have to be very open-minded and patient, and trust that this is somebody that the athlete chose to be a part of their care or be a part of their team. And I've learned to be very patient with that process.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It looks like we're running out of time here. I think the little one has to get to bed. So we'll wrap things up. I'm gonna rattle off 3 questions. First word that comes to mind. Ready? Okay. The key to a successful team is?
The key to a successful team. So many thoughts. Trust.
Done. Being successful during rehab requires?
Dedication to detail.
3 words. We'll take it. Dedication.
Okay, sorry. 1 word. Detail.
Your favorite thing about sport is?
Game day.
Oh, okay. There's nothing that beats game day. There's nothing that beats. It's like the energy is there. Like you're driving into the stadium and the arena, you can just feel it. Oh, you hit that on the head there. Oh, that was wonderful. Well, Amy, you've been fantastic. It's also been so good to catch up now that we've had an opportunity to travel and link up.
Uh-huh.
So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.